Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mental Health Town Hall. My name is Rick Pongratz. I'm the Director of Counseling and Testing Services on campus, and I am so happy to see the names and faces of so many of my dear friends from across campus showing up across the Zoom. And so it's an honor, really, and a privilege to be able to chat with you all today. I'm really happy and glad that you've chosen to join us. By the very fact that you are watching and participating in this event, I know that you care for our students and you want to learn more about how to support them. In addition, because each of you are, in all likelihood, a human being, you are yourself enduring unprecedented levels of stress in both your home lives and your work lives. And those struggles are things you didn't ask for. And it's important for us to acknowledge the stress that we're facing because that stress impacts our ability to serve students effectively, but also it impacts our ability to take care of ourselves and our well-being, and it impacts how we come together as a community and how we can support one another. And so it's important that we address those stresses that we have. So I'm delighted to be joined by an excellent group of panelists who are going to help us achieve the many goals that are laid out here of how to support students and take care of ourselves as well. Craig Chatron will address supportive services for students that go beyond the mental health services that my office, Counseling Testing, offers. Karen Appleby will give faculty members perspective on what they can do to help support and engage students. And Brian Sagendorf is going to be able to address resources available for faculty and staff so that we can get help in taking care of ourselves and dealing with all the extra stresses that we're under. I'm very happy for right now to turn things over to Ginny Larimar, who has agreed to facilitate this town hall for us, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about how to submit questions and get your questions answered.
Thanks, Rick. Hey, everybody. So I'm going to send a chat right now that explains how to ask live questions. You can either ask them to everyone, like I've posted the question here or the information here, or you can select my name, and that will ensure that you're asking me the question privately. And so I'll ask that anonymously for you if you prefer that. So in addition, we are recording this session. We'd like to get it in our employee newsletter, Idaho State Today, for Thursday's edition for anybody who's not able to join us today. And I will be looking at first the submitted list of questions and starting with those, and then I'll take live questions as we go. So any other questions you have, you can either ask of me or to everyone, and we'll get that answer for you. And then Rick, whenever you're ready, we can get going with those pre-submitted questions.
Okay, so I think what we'll do to start off here is I'll share a little bit of background about mental health struggles and in the COVID area and where we see those impacting us and our students. And then each of our panelists will talk briefly about their areas, and then we'll be opening up and handling all the questions. So we want to get some content out there first, because that might help us to be able to answer a lot of the questions that you all may have. So first of all, I'm going to talk a little bit about the mental health struggles that folks generally have, but with some special attention to students, because that's why we're all here at ISU, is to serve our students. And so regarding college student mental health, it's important to remember that things were bad already. Pre-COVID, we had in the counseling center here, we'd had 6 consecutive years of increasing demand for services. The students who are seeking help, often trauma histories are common. A high percentage of the students we work with struggle with thoughts of suicide, and we've seen that kind of increasing distress across the country over the last decade or more. COVID came along and made all of that worse. And so it sort of poured gas on a fire that was already there, and that students were struggling with all these concerns. And so I'm going to share some preliminary data with you through the screen here. Ginny, if you could enable my screen sharing. Thanks, I forgot to give you a heads up about that. And so Student Affairs and Corey Zink facilitated a student survey last week, and data is still coming in, but he's shared some of it with me already. So I'm going to share it with you. And this will give you a highlight of some of the ways that COVID has made things more stressful for our students. And so, oops, get rid of that. And so I think you can probably all see that now, the percentages. And so the question that was asked is, has COVID-19 had a negative impact in your life in the following areas? And this is preliminary data because it was just the first 900 or so responses that he's gotten. But I've seen some updated numbers that are about the same. So we see that, as we would expect, students are having negative impact in all these different life areas. And so obviously missed opportunities and experiences, that's high for everyone. Motivation, focus, and mental health is 54%. Academics, loneliness, and isolation, all of those, over half of those 900 students were reporting that their life is, they're having increased struggles in those areas because of COVID-19. And so they're on top of those things that were there before. We have these additional concerns. An interesting point is, we asked this exact same question of every client or every student who seeks services at the counseling center, and the percentages for those seeking mental health service compared to the general student body are strikingly similar. There's the students that we see in the counseling center have a slightly higher rate of saying that their mental health has been negatively impacted, as you might expect. It's 60% instead of 54%, but very similar. And the other thing about this data that I would encourage you to keep in mind is, even if you look down at something as low as, say, food and housing insecurity, and you might be tempted to say that 11% is a low number. But I think it's important to note that this means that 11%, which is about 100 students who filled out the survey, 100 of the students who filled out the survey, those 100 students are now struggling with worries about where their next meal is going to come from, or how stable their housing situation is because of COVID-19. And so that is a real and dramatic impact on the lives of those students. I don't know, were you able to see that? I got a weird message. Okay, great. Thanks, Paula and Tony. I'm so glad to see you there. So I wanted to share that data because it gives you a snapshot into not only the different ways that students' lives have been impacted by COVID-19, but also how profound some of those impacts can be. And you and I, as faculty and staff at ISU, our lives have been impacted in those different areas as well. And so to think about that and how we should respond, it can be helpful to consider a trauma response and this traumatic experience that we're all going through. And so if you use the analogy of a hurricane, and you know a couple days ahead of time that the hurricane's probably going to hit where you live, it blows through in 24 to 48 hours, and then the cleanup begins. And the cleanup is traumatic as well, and it's hard, but there's a different focus there. COVID has unfolded as an incredibly slow-moving storm. And so we've seen that since March, our lives are continually being disrupted in all of these different ways. And I've heard many times people say that we just want this to be over so that we can start getting back to work. And I agree. I would like that too. But we know that we have these traumatic experiences that happen and are compounded as this unfolds, and we're still in the midst of it. We've still got a ways to go. And sometimes that can cause us to feel, and our students to feel, more a sense of despair or lose hope sometimes. When we go through these traumatic experiences, those of you who are familiar with maybe Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that can be a good model for kind of what we need, what our students need, and can help guide us on where to go. And so foundational there is we need to have our biological needs met. So we need food, we need exercise, we need rest, we need shelter, we need water, we need to have warmth, all those things. And then we need safety, we need to make sure we're safe and secure. But right above that is belongingness and love. And that is pretty foundational for who we are. And that is an area that COVID has disrupted because of all of the social distancing or physical distancing that we have now. We aren't connecting with other people in the same ways that can be really restorative and helpful to us. And our students experience that, and we experience that as well. That's also helps us know maybe how we can respond to this. So as we're struggling, sometimes we get, it can be tempting to be frustrated or look external to our struggles and look for someone to blame or something to be angry at. And when in reality, we're kind of all in this together. We're all kind of struggling through this. We're struggling and our students are struggling. And it's important to know that while we're in this together, we're all kind of suffering, but we are each other's pathway through this. That by connecting with each other, we are able to help meet that fundamental need of belongingness and love, and then build towards an outcome here that both in the short term is more bearable to us, but then in the long term is more helpful to us as well. And technology has been our weapon, right? So, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword. We're able to have this meeting because of technology. I'm able to talk to my parents, continue talking to them because of technology. And so it's really been access for us, but especially for our young people, but for us as well, it can be kind of a problem if we rely too heavily on social media feeds or expose ourselves too much to all the negativity in the news. If we rely too heavily on text and meme-based communication, we can have some compounding mental health impact as well, as we're not connecting anymore and having the meaningful connections. We're kind of exposing ourselves to more of the hurtful things. And so I've talked about how things were rough before, how COVID made things worse. How do we help at the Counseling Center, and how do we ask you all to help as well? At Counseling and Testing, we have free and confidential services to all ISU students. We have individual counseling that students can meet with a counselor. We have group counseling, which is really one of our most powerful tools because it helps directly break down that sense of isolation and loneliness. We have trainings and workshops for students. We have at least one that we're doing every week. In the spring, we were doing them every day. But we've got at least one every week that we're doing, usually two that students are welcome to attend to connect with each other and learn new skills. We offer trainings for faculty and staff. So we have Respond training that Jenny's going to share in the chat box here in a little bit for you all to be able to sign up, but it teaches faculty and staff how to recognize a student in distress and then respond in ways that are professionally appropriate. So you don't have to be a counselor. We don't want you to be a counselor. You don't want to be a counselor, but it helps you be able to recognize someone's struggling and be a kind human who can support them. And then we also have trainings for things like Talk Saves Lives, which is a suicide prevention program similar to QPR that many of you have been trained in through our office. There are additional counseling centers available to students on campus. So I saw Karen Ludwig saw her name up on the screen. Karen works in the Center for New Directions, and they are a counseling service available to college and technology students. And the Department of Counseling has a clinic on the Meridian campus that helps serve those students as well. So we are happy to help connect students to all of their different resources. The next part is how we can all be a help to students. And so we can all help students by engaging them and having that connection with them and helping them feel as though they belong here. That is that need that needs to be met right now. We can all do that by asking how they're doing, talking to them about their struggles and their successes, and encouraging them. And that's honestly how we can be helping each other through this as well, is having those kinds of conversations. So that's too much talking from me for now. So I'm going to turn things over to Craig Chatron, who's going to talk more about the non-mental health means of support we have for students. And then Karen will be able to talk about faculty.
Thanks, Rick. If you go back and think about that list of issues that students have told us they've been impacted in the ways COVID-19 has impacted them, mental health was only one of the things up there. Some of the things that Rick pointed out, housing and food insecurity, those have such a tremendous impact on students. And so the Dean of Students Office works with students in a whole number of ways outside of just mental health. We do work to get students connected to the appropriate counseling center or other mental health resources, but we also work to get students some of the basic needs that they might need. So if students are struggling with food insecurity, we connect them to Benny's Pantry. And Stephanie Foreman really is the person on the Pocatello campus who does so much of this good work. If there is a resource on our campus or in our community that can be helpful to a student, Stephanie knows about it. The same thing with folks on our other campuses like Allie Crane and Chess Barnes. These folks work with students on any number of issues. And so what I like to try to tell students or other people in our community, if you have a need, if you have a question and you're not really sure where to go, come to the Dean of Students office. We'll do our best to get you connected to the correct resource. And whether that's on campus or in the community, we're going to do everything that we can to work with those students to get them the help and the support that they need. One of the things that we've been receiving a lot of phone calls about is students who are saying, I'm sick, I don't feel good, I tested positive for COVID, but I don't feel like I can miss my class. And so we've been trying to, in partnership with Academic Affairs, work with those students and work with their professors to try to find some good solutions so students can feel comfortable staying home, engaging in their class in the online environment, keep up with their coursework while not exposing the rest of our community to the risks of COVID-19. And so I just want to reiterate some of the things that Rick said. When students come to you with challenges, try to work with them with as much understanding, patience, and grace as you and your faculty can have. Our students are facing a number of compounding issues. If a student is struggling because they feel isolated and they feel alone, that's going to impact so many other parts of their life. Excuse me. And so if they're struggling to complete academic work, any opportunity we have to give students some leeway, some grace, is going to go a long way in helping that student remain healthy from an emotional, but also a physical standpoint. And it's going to help our community also. So now I'm going to turn it over to Karen and ask her to talk a little bit about the role faculty have in helping students right now.
Thank you, Craig. Hi, everybody. And first, I'd like to thank Rick for the opportunity to be here. I do know that talking about the responsibility that faculty have in taking care of the mental health needs of our students is something that every single person on this call could talk about. And so what I'm sharing with you today are just my thoughts from my perspective. And of course, all of the things that we've been reading over the past 6-7 months about how to support our students in the best way possible. But I also know that you all have some great ideas as well. And so I would encourage you to bring those up to Ginny in the chat or share those with us a little bit later. But when I think about the faculty, a faculty member's role in supporting students in mental health, Rick and Craig have already talked about a couple of these, but I think of the 3 R's, which is to recognize, respond appropriately, and then refer appropriately. And so we're in a different situation, I feel, than we were when all of this happened in March. And as Rick accurately pointed out, mental health issues did not start with COVID. I mean, they certainly start, of course, our students are human. We have helped our students in lots of ways before this, but COVID has increased the need for us to really think about how we structure our classes. And so in March, when we had to scramble and put things together, we had the opportunity in the fall semester to be more thoughtful. And recognizing the challenges that our students have in mental health, I think starts with the syllabus and how you put your classes together. If you talk about mental health, and Rick and the Counseling and Testing Services Center has a great mental health statement that you can put on a syllabus for students. It's not required in the syllabus, but certainly it's a powerful thing for students to see on a syllabus, to know that you recognize mental health issues do happen and that they are of great importance to you and that you take those things seriously. I think that helps in a few ways. First, it helps normalize the process of seeking help. Lots of our students don't like to seek help. And if they have to go find how to seek help or who to see on campus, that's likely a step they're not going to take. And so if you can take that first step for them by at least providing that information, that can be very powerful for them. I think it also helps students recognize and understand themselves and know that you take seriously the link between academic success and mental health. Academic success is very, very difficult in the classroom if you can't manage some of your mental health issues that you're having. And so I think that first step is just helping students recognize that you are aware they might be struggling in certain ways. The second thing is just to respond appropriately. Now, of course, responding to students in crisis is a situation where, as Rick mentioned, the respond training, the QPR suicide training, those new trainings that are happening, we are responsible for recognizing those red flags and responding appropriately. But I think we can also put some proactive pieces in place as faculty members. Looking at, and Craig brought up policies and procedures. What are some of the policies in our classes that we might be able to be flexible with? And I also understand that as faculty members, and I struggle with this, there's a balance between maintaining academic rigor and responsibility, because that's what our job is to do, is to teach students content and teach them to be personally responsible. But at the same time, looking at some of your policies that you might be able to be a little bit more flexible with, so that you can help a student maintain his or her health and also help the community maintain our community health. So thinking about what are your policies, attendance policies, late work policies, what might your alternative flexibility plans be for those? One interesting thing, I just want to share a story. I was reading an article the other day about a faculty member who was thinking about how some of the ways that she structured her assignments actually may lead to students' lack of physical and mental health. She said for years, she had her assignments due at midnight. And we all know the important link between sleep and physical and mental health. And what she realized is that some of her students, this might come as a surprise to everybody, might procrastinate some things, right? We procrastinate some things. And having those assignments due at midnight was actually kind of encouraging them to procrastinate and dip into that unhealthy sleep cycle. So she moved all of her assignment due times back to 5 p.m. So of course, that didn't completely get rid of the all-nighter maybe the night before, but it did help communicate to her students that time management is of utmost importance. So policies, looking at ways that, as Rick said, social connectedness, we're all learning about Zoom. We're all learning about ways that we can help connect with students and get students connected with each other. But also I think having office hours, encouraging students to visit you individually, asking about grades, questions, checking in on assignments, having some of those open office hours and encouraging, not just saying I have open office hours, but I want you to come in and talk about your grade. Come in with a question, visit with me, because we're not getting those hallway conversations with our students anymore, which I really miss and I think they do too. The last piece is to refer appropriately. And this is knowing your limits of competence. As Rick said, as faculty members, we are not mental health counselors or mental health professionals, and we are not expected to be. But what we are expected to be able to do is to refer students appropriately. And so I keep on my desk at school and now my home office desk a list of all of the resources on campus that I can help connect students with. And it's not about just giving a student a phone number to the counseling and testing center. It might mean walking a student down there in a mask and socially distanced if you can. So where is the center on campus? Students experience a wide variety of non-clinical but anxiety-producing issues. For example, when they're getting ready to graduate, have they met all of the requirements for graduation? I have the registrar's number right next to my office phone. And if there's a question, I call the registrar. You know, make that first contact. Don't just say to the student, go see the registrar, but make that contact for them. You know, those are just some things that we can do. One last piece that's just come up with me in my classes over the past 2 weeks, I have had a couple students mention this to me, is recognizing that one of the really valuable things we are providing students is giving them a sense of structure in a world right now that seems sort of structureless. And so it is helpful to keep structure in your classes and give students meaningful assignments to work toward goals, because that motivation piece that Rick talked about at the beginning is really tough right now. It's tough to be motivated to completion. And so recognizing that we're not only teaching academic success in our classrooms, but we are helping just through our teaching our students stay mentally and physically healthy. So those are my pieces. And I think I am handing it over to Brian.
Thanks, everybody. And I would really like to thank Rick also for hosting this session today. I think our mental health needs, just our health needs in general has been something that we don't talk about enough, even before COVID-19. And as Rick said, now in these kind of circumstances and the stresses that it's added for all of us, these type of conversations and talking through the resources that we all have is more important than ever. And hopefully that's something that we learn coming out of COVID-19, and we will come out of it someday. But when we come out of it, knowing these resources are there, if there's any good from this, that we can be aware of all the help that's out there and be more connected and utilize these kind of resources. One of the most overlooked pieces of our benefits plan for our faculty and staff here at the university has been our employee assistance program. So I'm going to talk about that for just a minute. I think what Dr. Appleby and Craig talked about from the Dean of Students and Rick, as far as faculty helping students be aware of the available resources to them, I think that all applies as well to staff, that if any of you as staff members needing to help support students and refer them to the resources, everything that Karen and Craig talked about holds true for all of us as staff if you're interacting with students as well. But as far as our self-care, for us as staff, for us as faculty, employees of the university, the employee assistance program has always been kind of this overlooked piece of our benefits plan that gets forgotten about far too often. Our EAP benefits is something that all of us have as faculty and staff. It provides for up to 5 free counseling sessions, or 5 they're provided for by the plan, that we can utilize some counseling services. If any of us just need to talk through some of the added stress and challenges that we are all dealing with right now, the EAP can provide that for me, for my spouse, for my family members there in my household, for anything about the added marital stress, the added work stress, the added conflict that I maybe am having with coworker, the stresses of trying to work through a new learning environment with my kids in school that I've never had to parent through. Those kind of stresses, the EAP can be such a tremendous resource that I can get some help, talk through those things with trained experts. Our EAP benefits are administered by a company called ComPsych. And if we haven't added them already, I think I can put here, Ginny's put it in the chat. There's a link for our counseling resources through the Employee Assistance Program. Thank you, Ginny. That has a toll-free number on there that anybody can call that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. If you are having some stresses and challenges, you can call that. An expert with ComPsych will help first listen to your concerns, and then connect you with a local resource here in town, whether it's in Meridian, Pocatello, Idaho Falls. They can put us in contact with the right expert to help guide us through the challenges that we are all dealing with. One question that I get sometimes is, after the 5 visits are done, am I cut off? Does that then end? And no, if I need some ongoing care, some ongoing counseling, that can roll over into our health insurance coverage with Blue Cross of Idaho. So it's an interconnected type of service. You'll want to provide your your healthcare provider with the insurance information we have from Blue Cross, but by no means is somebody cut off. That is an important part of our health and well-being moving forward. And I hope, there's always been this stigma that the EAP is something that I don't need to tap into that unless there was something really extreme. First off, I think we've all gone through something really extreme over the last several months. But the Employee Assistance Program is there to help us manage our day-to-day stresses and challenges. And I would really encourage all of us to maybe to tap into that this year. Give it a call, give it a try, and see what that additional support and resource can do to help you with some self-care, help manage the added stress that every one of us has felt. And let's break down that stigma of there's something wrong if I call the Employee Assistance Program. I will tell everybody from my own personal experience, the EAP is a tremendous benefit and tremendous value for me personally, for my family. I hope that everyone here will consider using that when you have a need as well. And with that, I will turn things back over to Rick and Ginny if there are any additional, with follow-up questions for the group.
Thank you, Brian. Ginny, I think, has been collecting some questions for us, so I will turn it over to Ginny to guide us through and kind of assign questions or throw them out there for us to have a whack at. So.
You bet. Thank you. Brian, I'm going to give you a quick follow-up question from your presentation. The question is there a way to donate EAP sessions to others like we can donate vacation time?
Great question. Unfortunately, no, there's not a way to donate EAP visits. Our group insurance plan provides for, up to the 5 provided visits that are already there in the plan. Again, if more services are needed, that can roll over into our health insurance. So there is continued coverage, but unfortunately, no, the insurance coverage and EAP benefits in and of themselves don't allow for a compassionate transfer of, I don't need 5 visits, I can transfer some to another employee. Unfortunately, that is not possible in the plan at this time.
Okay. And Brian, if you'll hang in with me for a minute, these next few submitted questions, the first on the list are staff related and HR related. So I'm going to lean on you pretty heavily for this first bit. The first question, and it's a little bit long, so bear with me, everybody. The first question, when the campus was shut down for COVID in March, there were a few employees that were determined to be essential and told to continue work through the new unprecedented difficult conditions to continue to maintain the building while other employees and students were sent home. As campus opened back up, the same employees continue to prepare workstations, classrooms for others returning about 5 months in a more comfortable environment, and others continuing to working and doing their school at home. After 7 months of being essential and the everyday stress that is taking the toll on those employees, is there anything being considered to give these employees some extra time off to help them de-stress? And they clarify that it's not asking for money, just a time off.
Thank you, Jenny, and it's a great question. And this has absolutely been an unprecedented time for faculty and staff or students who've all been asked to complete job assignments and learning environments in a way that's never been required before. What staff and facilities were able to do in revamping physical workstations, the setup of different office spaces, that have never been planned for previously was amazing. By the same token, faculty, were asked to convert their coursework to a completely new delivery model with little to no resources in the matter of just a few weeks. What faculty were able to do in turning that around this past spring and complete that spring semester and then be ready for this fall semester is one of the biggest accomplishments that I think we have ever seen as a university. The accomplishments of the whole team, all of us, faculty and staff together through these challenging times has been occurring through a mix of on-campus essential work that has to be done and equally essential work that is being done, off campus and possibly in remote locations. I think where that question is coming from is absolutely touching on something that we are all feeling is such added stress. The only thing I might take a minor issue with in the question is talking about, some people working in their comfort zones. I've talked to so many employees over the past several months. I will say very few of us are in a comfortable zone, right now. It has been a difficult past several months. I've had many conversations with essential workers here on campus who have felt exhausted with everything that's been accomplished over the last several months and the mountain that's ahead of us still. By the same token, I've had some of those same conversations with employees that are working remotely, being asked to complete their work in a way that they have never imagined before, that they've never planned for or prepped for, and they don't have the resources at their homes, their office setup, their computer setup, their files, trying to get the job done without those resources right at their fingertips has been incredibly stressful and exhausting to those employees as well. For all of us, it's vitally important for us to find time to get away, unplug, engage in some self-care. If you haven't already done so, it's absolutely important that you have a conversation with your supervisor about the need to take some time off of work. That goes both for employees that have been working continuously on campus, but also for employees who have been working remotely. I've talked to many remote working employees who have felt that it has been more difficult than ever to divide that home life and work life, and kind of separate them. Some of those employees that have been working remotely have really struggled that, some days when you weren't really feeling well, I knew I could call in, I don't feel great, I'm going to call in sick today. And there was this division that I'm home, I'm resting. And now I'm not feeling well, but there's this pressure of, well, I feel like I still got to work. And that snowballs and that piles up. And suddenly the stress, the exhaustion, just can wear you down. All of us have vacation benefits. All of us have sick leave. If we have some facility staff or others, some hourly, overtime eligible staff that have been putting in some very, very long hours over the past several months, many of them have also accrued compensatory time with all the overtime maybe that they have worked. By all means, I really strongly encourage everybody, have that conversation with your supervisors about the absolute vital need to take some time off, to recharge, unwind, and step away from work for a bit. If we don't take the time to sharpen our own health and stay fresh, our work product will suffer for it.
Thanks, Brian. Also relating to working remotely and essential work, this next question is, as a worker in facility services, there is now an added stress for us as we try to respond to work requests, dealing with requesters working from home. If people don't answer their phones and coworkers on campus do not know anything about the request, sometimes it takes longer for their calls to be returned. Can the departments be asked to implement something to help with this work from home glitch?
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, we have all absolutely experienced some bumpiness. There has been, as we have tried to adapt to a new operational status that we have never dreamed of. How many of us would have even imagined 8 months ago what we'd be doing today? So we have had some bumpiness in that transition to our current operations. Some of the departments have adapted a little better than others, and others are still trying to catch up with maybe getting into a groove of what our our current normal is. So as far as working through these glitches that were mentioned in that question, definitely please speak with your management teams about the hiccups you're experiencing. We're all in this together. I think Rick mentioned that something earlier about that in his comments, that we as a team need to help each other out, look out for one another. I know many of us have exhibited great amounts of compassion, trust, and patience as we've been adapting to our new normal. Let's continue to assume positive intent, that other departments aren't trying to be difficult or trying to make your day-to-day task more difficult, but they are trying to adapt to a very stressful situation as well. So let's continue to communicate with management teams and different work groups with compassion and understanding that it's taking some time for you to get up to speed, but we're going to get there. Consult with your managers about what challenges you're experiencing, and that can be addressed with the respective management teams as we problem solve together and find the right solutions to keep getting the jobs done. But I'm sure that those things will be better refined, and we are going to find better ways to get the work done over the coming weeks and months.
Thanks, Brian. This next question is also in the same context, and I think it's a little bit of you, Brian, and a little bit of you, Rick. How can staff who are handling the extra load in office work, covering, for example, covering for those working out of the office or out sick, manage their mental health better? It can be hard to step away when the work still needs to be done. Are there strategies to help spread the load and thus the mental capacity that some offices are using that is effective?
Yeah, I'll give you a chance to catch your breath there, Brian. So I'll talk a little bit about the strategies that maybe any of us who are asking this question of ourselves can try to implement as how we manage the stress that we're experiencing as we're on the job, and whether that's, in the scenario of the question, it's someone who's sitting at a desk and the work has to be done and their ability is limited to move around from there. But the same is true of all of us, regardless of where we're working in the situation. And I think that the important thing to remember is that self-care and taking care of ourselves and dealing with these stresses is very rarely exciting. Most self-care in our office, when we talk to students, we call it boring self-care, right? It's the things that is fundamental to this body, this biological organism, and the brain inside of it that helps it be efficient and adapt. And so regardless of the situation we're in, there are things that we can do in service of that. And so the first thing I'll share is a story, and then I'll talk a little bit about some tips. And so a lot of you, if you're a mental health background, you might know Viktor Frankl. He was a psychiatrist, psychologist, I can't remember which, who was in the Nazi death camps during World War II. And he made this observation about the people around him, and that here they are in this ultimate torment, this situation where they have no prospect of escape, and it's really, really horrible environment. And he observed that some people, in spite of that, seemed to be thriving, and some people really suffered profoundly. And so there was a difference. They're all in that same situation together, but yet there's a difference in how they're coping and how some of the people are coping. And what he finally determined and wrote about was that regardless of the situation, people had a power to decide how they wanted to approach that situation. And he saw that the people who did well were those who took this incredibly difficult situation and challenged themselves to have a purpose and to be in the present moment and in service of other people. And so that is something that's important for us to remember then. And so how we can apply that is we can think about what our basic needs are, and are we getting healthy food? Are we drinking enough water in those situations? These are the boring self-care. Exercise is really important. So if I'm stuck in an office and I've got to be able to answer the phone, can I arrange for some swaps or temporarily transfer a call to someone who might know something about, or be able to answer questions, or at least take good messages, and I take a walk around the quad every couple hours or something like that? Can I get up and walk around my office space a little bit? Can I move my body and get my blood flowing in ways that can be helpful? Can I challenge myself to be really focused on the present moment? Can I challenge myself to just try to step away from multitasking and tracking things on Facebook or things like that, and really focus on the present moment and resolving one thing at a time, so that I get a sense of accomplishment as I work through some different strategies? And then can I connect with other people and have meaningful conversations with folks while I'm there? So those are just some of the general topics of taking care of some of those basic needs, and then also giving yourself something to focus on. And the thing that I want to really push, and Brian mentioned this is compassion. And so Brian was talking about having compassion for one another, that we're all going through this. I think we also need to challenge ourselves to have compassion for ourselves, that this is hard. And if I can view myself and others with compassion, it softens all the hard edges for all the interactions that I'm going to have. And it helps me feel better. As humans, one of the things that we can do that contributes most to our happiness is do something kind for someone else. And so if I can have that compassion for myself and others, I'm able to practice that and be able to cope with these situations in a little bit better ways. And I talked longer than I wanted, but I'll turn it over to Brian to get the other part of that question. So.
Well, thank you, Rick. And I did just drop into the chat also a link. It's scratching the surface, but we've tried to compile a few resources for managers and employees as far as some tips to working remotely, some different guides and strategies. One thing for supervisors, for any of you that are managing teams, this was mentioned a bit earlier before. I think Dr. Appleby mentioned it with regard to the students, that, we're not having those hallway conversations and that interaction anymore. The same goes true for the work teams that we're a part of. And so much work and so much cohesion from a team comes from just being able to pass each other by the water cooler and say, how's it going? So one strategy that we as managers need to think about is different ways that we can increase communication and contact with our teams. Think about different, these little tools that we've got are kind of a blessing and a curse. Sometimes I hate this thing, but still the opportunity that I, can connect with everybody through Google Chats, through Marco Polo, through, different social media, to stay connected, to keep helping support each other, using technology, trying to leverage that as managers to keep the team working together, and even just that connection is a very important part of still getting the job done. But as employees, let's continue to consult with our managers on the workloads that we're all trying to adapt to as well. We're all feeling the weight of taking on more and more responsibility. Let's continue to find ways, problem solve with our managers and how we can adapt to our work environment. That may mean, are there some things that we feel this pressure of continuing to do something because that's the way we've always done it, but can we brainstorm with our supervisors and manager teams on doing that work differently? Are there other things that we can put on the back burner and maybe aren't a priority today, and we can relieve some of the stress that's on us with some things that can be postponed for another time? I'm sure many of us can continue to think creatively also on how to do things more remotely. So I think one thing that I would ask managers to also is, you don't have to have all those answers alone. Problem solve with your teams, consult with leadership and your management teams and the whole work team in general. And I know, as we have done over the last several months, we'll continue to find great solutions for being able to get the essential work done over the coming weeks.
Thank you, Brian and Rick. In this same category about self-care and taking some time, this next question, first it's a comment. Thank you for this resource addressing faculty and staff mental health. And then the question, I think faculty and staff should be encouraged to use sick leave when their mental health suffers due to workload and work-related stress and anxiety. Does ISU consider this an acceptable use of sick leave, and is documentation required? And I will give that to you, Brian. Thank you.
Great. Excellent question. And yeah, sick leave is there for our health. And there's really no distinction between physical health, mental health. If I need to step away, we need to kind of change the mindset that it's perfectly acceptable that I can use a sick day because I've got a cold, and a sore throat and sniffles, and to think that is more health related than the stress and anxiety and, huge burden that I'm carrying on my shoulders, that sometimes a day away to handle that is equally, if not more important. So by all means, our sick leave is there for our health. If I need to be away from the work because of the need to self-care and take care of myself, we have accruals for that reason. As far as the documentation goes, I guess the bottom line is this: the use of sick leave and the need for documentation is no different for physical health or mental health. if an employee needs to take the time off for their health, we have the accruals for that purpose. Sometimes documentation can be needed if it's a long-term type of leave of absence, so a department can plan appropriately. In those circumstances, the manager and the employee call HR. We can help consult with you on what's needed, but by all means, sick leave is there for our health, physical and mental.
Okay.
Can I interject something quickly to follow up with you, Brian? And you probably were going to add this later, but we do have an ADA office, and some people may find that long-term they need help. And so, it's not just for our students. And some of you may be the kind of person your colleagues confide in. And, please understand that ISU supports our faculty and their disabilities, both physical and mental. And that's another important resource as things linger so long and may have some effects that just take a little longer to shake.
Excellent point. Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Okay, thanks, Anne, and Brian as well. We have some questions related to students and support that we can give to students in a precarious situation. So the first one, I've lost my place here, excuse me. I've noticed students feel guilty for getting sick. What can we do to help them with this? And I would say Rick or Brian or Craig, whoever wants to jump in.
Yeah, so the question is about students feeling guilty for getting sick or anxious about waiting for results and things like that. So I think the thing that's most important whenever we're talking with students or faculty or staff about this disease and the sickness is nobody's asking for COVID, right? No one is, I'm sure someone can say, oh, I know this one person, or I heard about the COVID party at the University of Alabama. Okay, fine. But for the vast majority of cases, nobody is out trying to get sick. And there are people who are doing everything they can and following all the protocol to avoid getting sick who get sick. And so the important thing for us all to collectively agree is that that there's no room for shame or complaints against people who get sick. People who are sick are members of our community that deserve our love and our support, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that they know they're valued here, whether healthy or not. And so what we want to do then is, if a student is feeling guilty about that, just encourage them to, that they did the right thing by getting tested. They did the right thing by reporting that they weren't feeling well. And by doing those things, they are keeping their community safe. And so those are the keys, is that there's no room for, oh, what did you do wrong to get this? Because that's not an appropriate question. We shouldn't be making that assumption. We should be saying, I'm so sorry to hear that you're not feeling well. Thank you for being responsible and helping keep our community safe by getting tested and letting us know. And then making all the steps, doing all the things that we can do to help them stay up to speed with their academics and get success and get support.
So a lot of what I would say would echo Rick. Do everything you can to create an environment where students feel comfortable sharing with you. We don't want students who are sick, have symptoms of COVID or the flu or a cold, feel like they have to come and hide that illness, and they have to come to your class or to their on-campus employment. Try to create an environment where they feel like they can tell you they're not feeling well. When I've talked to folks about that before, one response I always get is, but what if someone takes advantage of it? Well, right now, if someone takes advantage of it, okay, that stinks. But I'd rather have people take advantage of our leniency that direction, as opposed to being sick and coming to campus. So like Rick said, thank you for sharing with me that you're not feeling well. Please let me know if there's any way that I can be helpful or supportive to you. We'll get you caught up on your work when you feel better, but for now, take care of yourself. I think that's a good response.
Okay, thanks, Rick. And Craig, next question in this same context. Where can students get help if they talk to their instructors about their stress and mental health and instructors do not respond with empathy or understanding? And I will lean on Craig and Karen for this answer.
Students can always come to the Dean of Students office, and one of the things that we do is we try to help students navigate some of those conversations. And so some of our staff might sit in on a conversation and help mediate that with between a student and a faculty member. We always try to make it very clear to students we don't have any of the authority to make anybody do anything, but what we try to do is facilitate a conversation to help everybody come to some consensus or agreement. And so that's what my office can do in terms of helping in that situation. Karen, what suggestions did you have?
I don't really have anything outside, Craig, of what you just suggested, but going back to setting up your policies is try not to be part of that problem for a student, is just try to not be a person that isn't going to be flexible. And here's something interesting, you know, that we were so focused on COVID, students still get sick for other reasons too. And so, you know, and I think a lot of the stress is creating all sorts of things. So it might not even be COVID related. So I think students are almost feeling guilty now when they're sick for other reasons and it's not COVID related. So just, I think, having that open dialogue with your students, being flexible with them, just exactly what Craig said.
Great, thank you both. Rick, anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think that's great. I think the students are always welcome to come to the counseling center and talk with us about stresses that they may have or use the other resources on campus. The thing that I've learned about ISU is that there are a lot of really caring faculty and staff here. And if you happen to bump into one who's not, there are plenty more who are going to be a good person to talk to get support.
Great, thank you. Also relating to students, I'm going to lean on Craig for this one. Is there a place specifically appropriate to refer a student experiencing eviction/housing insecurity?
So the best resource would be have them come to the Dean of Students office. We're gonna connect them to Stephanie Foreman, who has done a lot to help students who are housing insecure. She's got some community resources, some resources through the state. And so that's the first place I would direct to students, have them come over to the Dean of Students office. Actually, right now, the best way to do that is to email deanofstudents@isu.edu. And that's our general office email. That'll get directed to Stephanie, who will do outreach to the person who's being impacted by that eviction and see what resources we can bring to help them out.
Great, thanks, Craig. This one is a bit of a deviation from the content that we're covering, but I still want to ask it. So this is in the submitted form. I understand the need to keep people's protected health information private, but how do we balance this with the need to inform our staff about the current risk level in our area? I know of 3 positive tests for people in the office with offices in my vicinity. Only one person has chosen to openly inform my department. This seems unfair to staff who are coming to work every day, possibly unaware of the risk around them. And Brian, I'm afraid I'm going to have to lean on you for that one.
That's such a great question. And I think the right wording there at the start, the critical piece was, how do you balance, what's the right balance there? Because there are some very, very critical regulations in terms of privacy and confidentiality related to Family Medical Leave Act, the Americans with Disabilities Act, among many other federal regulations that we have to adhere to those things. So I would say the strategy, how we balance that, is with contact tracing that is on campus. And we're fortunate as an organization. Not every employer and organization has some of the resources that we have, we have some of the greatest public health experts in the state working for the university, including a contact tracing team. So that team First off, if somebody is experiencing any symptoms or not feeling well, fill out the self-reporting disclosure form to that team. Those contact tracers are then reaching out to those people who have had close contact with the person to make sure they have the critical knowledge and guidance in terms of what they need to do from a health standpoint. That now balancing that with the need for privacy, we can't send out mass notifications outside of that, but that also reinforces the need that for the rest of us, that's why we all need to adhere to the health and safety protocols of wearing a face covering at all times when we're on campus, except maybe when we're in a private office. Maintaining our physical distancing of 6 feet, washing our hands, covering a cough, staying home if we're ill, trying to utilize remote work. If as many of us can be working from home where the jobs are conducive to that, that will reduce the all of us bumping into each other here on campus and keep it safer for those that do have to be here on campus. So I think it's going to be very important that we all adhere to those health and safety protocols. But rest assured, we have some contact tracing experts that are taking all responsibility and care for notifying those individuals that have had close contact with somebody who tests positive.
Great. Thanks, Brian. Okay, we have an observation, and this is in response to the earlier questions on essential employees on campus. So the observation is the essential employees that do invisible labor on campus, sometimes when it's dangerous, some on our campus treat these employees horribly. This is not a question, just an observation. Can we please show custodial employees kindness when we encounter them? So I wanted to share that and let me know, Brian, if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
I greatly appreciate that comment and absolutely would applaud the need that we've got to show that compassion. One of the bright spots of the day I always have is talking to the custodial teams as they come through our building as well. So we're all in this together. Let's care for one another, be compassionate, look out for one another, and the jobs that everyone is doing is so vitally important. So I completely agree with that comment. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. This one is COVID related, not necessarily mental health related. Surveys show a large number of people will refuse a vaccine even when it's available. Given that some of us plan to be working at home permanently, will vaccination be mandated for everyone? And Brian, I will turn that one to you, please.
I guess the best answer I can give on that is we don't know yet. We have heard about some of the federal plans for Operation Warp Speed, is that what we're calling it? But we will see what comes forward in terms of vaccination availability. The information that I think we've read and seen is I don't think any of us can expect that there's suddenly going to be doses for everybody any time soon. I think that's going to be a rather prolonged and phased approach. We will wait and see what the guidance is from the local public health experts on anything that becomes available there.
Great, thanks, Brian. Okay, that is all of our questions for now, and we have approached the hour mark. So I would love to turn this back over to Rick for any closing remarks.
Great, thank you, Jenny. Once again, I just want to thank each and every one of you for joining this call, and I'm going to share a couple final comments. Again, your presence demonstrates a desire to help serve our students and care for the well-being of our community. As Brian mentioned earlier, we're going to get to the other side of COVID at some point. What's up to us right now is to decide for ourselves, what kind of human do I want to be while all this unfolds? What do I want to contribute to my community while this all unfolds? I've heard many times that I just want this to be over. Me too. The past 6 months have been more stressful than we could have imagined. In the past, students would have their struggles and we would come together and help them. We would have ours and our colleagues would help us. We can easily forget that all the profound struggles we're having right now are valid reactions to this legitimately incredibly difficult experience that we're all going through. But remember, no one who has developed resilience has done so without getting knocked down a few times. And part of working on a college campus is being given the honor and the profound responsibility of helping students not only overcome the challenges that they face, but also helping them to become young adults in this world. COVID has had an amplifying effect on all of that, but we have hope here, okay? Historically, we see that in difficult times, people can sometimes lose hope and fall into despair. This is especially true when the way forward is uncertain, as everything is right now. And without exception, we see that what brings people through is engagement in a community and engagement in our relationships. That's what brings us through those difficult times. Not just being a part of a community, but really engaging in the community. So it helps us survive dark times, and it helps bind us together and helps us all grow stronger. So that is my challenge for all of you. Please be the wonderful and caring human that you are. Be compassionate towards yourself and others, and do what you can to help, however this unfolds, happen in the ways that is most compassionate and in the most service to others and ourselves that you can possibly do. So thank you all, and have a great rest of your week.